Hi there, it's Alexandra from the Middle-Sized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and I am officially really bad at growing vegetables. So I'm not going to tell you how to grow vegetables. I am going to leave some really useful resources in the description below to YouTubers, bloggers and books who can help you grow individual vegetables far better than I could. But what I am going to tell you is the mistakes that I made that you don't have to make. And those mistakes will make all the difference to your vegetable growing if you're starting it now. People say, quite rightly, that growing vegetables is easy, and it is. Popular vegetables become popular because they will grow in pretty much any soil. Potatoes, beans, chard, lettuce, they'll grow all over the world. And the techniques you use for vegetables, planting, deadheading, which is called harvesting in the vegetable world, feeding, watering, I mean, all those are the most simple techniques. You're not usually at all thinking about things like pruning. So why do our vegetable harvests go wrong? I was talking about this to a friend of mine who's a lawyer, and she too has been through the curve of growing vegetables really, really badly and come out the other side, and she's now actually a brilliant vegetable grower, although she wouldn't admit it. And they're absolutely brilliant tips, so I will go through them. But first, I want to make the most important point. Yes, vegetable growing is easy, but, and this is the biggest but of all, it does take more time and attention than growing flowers in a border. If you spend 2 hours one weekend in your main border really getting it straight, you actually can sometimes leave it for 3 or 4 weeks without touching it and it will still look good. If you do that in the vegetable patch, you will lose your entire harvest. And above all, this, when I look back on my veg growing successes and failures, that is absolutely the key. However, if you have time to go into your veg garden every day, even for a very short amount of time, you have a much better chance of growing successful vegetables. The other thing to bear in mind is that growing your own vegetables doesn't always save you money. It can save you money. James Wong went on to Twitter the other day to say, if you're really, really short of money, don't spend money on buying vegetable seeds, compost, tools and so on, in the hopes that you will save money growing vegetables. If you haven't grown vegetables before, then having some salad leaves in a window box, provided you can afford the outlay, which isn't going to be very much, it'll be a packet of salad seeds and a bit of compost, will give you some lovely fresh leaf vegetables in about 30 days, but it can't make you self-sufficient. Being self-sufficient in vegetables does require some experience. And in the links in the description below, I'll leave links to a homesteader and someone who is self-sufficient in vegetables. YouTuber Huw Richards, whose book Food for Free will be very helpful if you're trying to save money, suggests that you start off by becoming self-sufficient in one thing. You could say, I want to become self-sufficient in potatoes, or I want to become self-sufficient in herbs. And now on to Leslie's tips. Leslie's number one tip is that veg love sun. Now, when I was a child, the vegetable patch was usually out of sight of the house. But even in quite modest houses, you often had really quite big gardens. They were often very long, for example. So you could put a vegetable patch in a sunny place out of sight of the house. Today's gardens are much smaller. Anything that's out of sight of the house may well be very shady. It will be sheltered by a shed or by overhanging trees or by a fence, or it will just simply be a bit of a dumping ground. Don't try and grow your veg there. There are a few things apparently that do okay in the shade. Turnips apparently, I haven't tried that one, I will let you know. Rhubarb I kind of see almost anywhere, although I think it doesn't really want to be in the shade. But when it comes to planning where your veg are going to go, it has to be in a sunny spot. People are increasingly putting a veg bed in the middle of the lawn and really appreciating how beautiful vegetables can be, but we're not all ready for that. And also there's the other opportunity, is perhaps just for one summer, is simply to abandon your best sunny flower border altogether and just grow veg there. That's absolutely fine, but if you've got a lot of perennials, you may not be ready for that either. One thing I am going to try is mixing veg and flowers a bit more. I think there are some beautiful sort of architectural kales I could grow, and perhaps have a bean teepee instead of a climbing rose would be lovely in the middle of a bed. So I think that's an option. And another option is also to have veg in pots. A lot of them grow well in pots, and to put those in a sunny spot. So If you have a really large pot, you can grow courgettes, potatoes, and put a bean teepee in it. You do need to give them a bit of soil, so go for a large pot, not a small one. I've had some dismally bonsai vegetables from leaving them in overly small pots. Leslie's next tip was prepare your soul. I was rather impressed by this. So I thought, I wonder what preparing your soul is. And then I checked with her and she said it was prepare your soil. Well, prepare your soil is really important. And actually you might want to prepare your soul as well, because you will have to get used to just popping out to the veg patch, just even for 5 minutes a day. However, in terms of preparing your soil, a layer of well-rotted manure or mushroom compost or garden compost will work wonders. Every single veg loves this. You can even use lawn clippings as a mulch, and they do break down eventually to transfer nutrients into the soil. And in terms of preparing the soil, you can either do the traditional digging over and incorporating compost, or you can do no dig, which is where you lay a layer of manure or compost or mulch on top. And I will put links to videos and blog posts explaining no dig in the description below. Leslie's next tip is not everything will work. No matter how good a grower you are, she said, some things just will fail. Sometimes it's the weather, sometimes it's a dud packet of seeds, sometimes heaven knows what it is. But you can't control everything, and it's really important when something doesn't work out is not to think, oh, I'm no good at growing vegetables, but to think, I wonder if there's anything I can learn from that. And if not, I'll just try again. I might do it differently. Leslie's next point is choose wisely, and I would really echo this. I've had great success with courgettes, beans, potatoes, salad leaves. They are easy, and I've put quite a few links to blog posts and videos showing you how to grow some of the easier veg in the description below. For example, Leslie says that spinach just all comes up at once and then it bolts. Whereas if you use chard, or she calls it silver beet as she's Australian, then you can actually cut and come again and use it for absolutely months at a time and it doesn't bolt. And I would completely agree with that. I have now had great success with perpetual spinach, and I have got a row of spinach which I've harvested from for several months. But I have found spinach difficult, so I would suggest going for chard, or even one of the Japanese or Chinese vegetables like komatsuma or pak choi instead of spinach. Leslie's next tip is inspect the veggie garden daily or almost daily. This is where I've gone very wrong in the past. I've quite often sowed seeds and potted some plants on and got it all sorted, and then I get terribly busy and I don't go back to the potting shed for 4 or 5 days. They're very hot 4 or 5 days, and when I come back my seeds are absolutely dry, and they've been dry for days. And they will not sprout in those conditions, and also very small plants need regular water. Your veg can't really be left without watering until it's a pretty decent size. For example, a really mature courgette with great big leaves can probably survive the drought quite well for maybe 4 or 5 days, because the leaves stop the water evaporating off the soil and it's got quite deep roots. But really, until you get to that point, you have to make sure that they're well watered. They don't want to be soaked. No vegetable likes being soaked, but they just need to be slightly damp. And you will only know whether they've got enough water if you check them every day. Leslie also says that you can use that time to check for any pests, so that if there's aphids or caterpillars or something, you can get in there and you can sort it out quite quickly before it becomes a real problem. Leslie also advises feeding your vegetables regularly. In your flower garden, you should feed the soil and not the plant. There are some very hungry plants like roses which really benefit from a feed at least once a year. But in the flower garden, if you add a once a year layer of manure or mulch, you're probably keeping your soil well nourished. And most of your plants probably won't need any extra fertiliser. But as Charles Dowding has often said, vegetables are the Olympic athletes of the plant world. They will need some extra help because they're growing very fast. So use something like a seaweed fertiliser or a slow release fertiliser, or there's a link in the description below to some homemade fertilisers that you can make that work very well. And for the same reason, vegetables really don't like to compete with weeds. They take the nutrients from the soil, and although I have a very relaxed attitude to weeds in my flower borders, and indeed I love self-seeders, I have realised that allowing weeds to self-seed in my veg patch has really cut down on my harvests. It's worth thinking about how long vegetables take to grow, particularly if you feel that you need to supply your family with fresh fruit and vegetables quickly. The quickest vegetables are the salad leaves, and they will be ready in a minimum of 30 days, and really often more like 45 days. Most vegetables take between 2 months and 4 months from planting the seeds, so it's not a quick fix. And when it comes to harvesting, I have an extra tip, because if you think, oh, I'm going to leave those, so-and-so's coming around for supper on Tuesday and I'd love to serve my homegrown chard, so I'm just going to leave it there. Actually, you get fewer veg. Beans, mange tout peas, chard, spinach, salad leaves, all those and many others are cut and come again vegetables. The more you harvest, the more you'll get. And if you leave something like beans on the vine, unpicked for weeks at a time, your bean plant will just stop producing. It'll just think, well, I've done my job. Nobody really needs me anymore. So as soon as your beans and your courgettes are ready, pick them, store them in the fridge, blanch them, freeze them, eat them, but don't save them for a special occasion. Just keep picking and picking and picking. And when you're harvesting salad leaves, snip a few leaves from outside the edges of the plant. Don't snip right across. Lettuces go on producing for much longer if you snip all the way around them than if you snip across. Do please feel free to let me know what your mistakes were in the comments below, because that's hugely useful for other people. And if you'd like more tips, ideas and inspiration, mainly about the flower part of your garden, for your middle-sized garden, then do subscribe to the Middle-Sized Garden YouTube channel. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.